Hello and welcome once more to Conscious TV. I'm Iain McNay and my guest today is Carla Verberk. Hi Carla.
Hi Iain.
So Carla is a teacher of Tantra and we're going to hear about her work and also about her life. I've known Carla for many, many years now and followed her development, her spiritual development. And once again, really Conscious TV is about looking at a deeper level of who we really are. And through her work, her Tantra work, we're going to find a way through to that. So, Carla, you sent me some notes before we started this interview. And the thing that intrigued me was your first spiritual experience was when you kissed a boy. Just talk us through that.
Yeah, that was. Yeah, I kissed a boy next to the shed of my parents. Actually, he kissed me. And what happened for me it was such a strong experience. I was immediately thrown back into the moment. And these days I was very mental. I was 15 and I was really trying hard to study Latin and Greek, for which I had no natural feeling. I did it really to please my parents, and I was really trying to be a good person. I was actually, looking back, I think I was full of anger and hate, but I was really trying to behave. And then I kissed, and what happened, I felt immediately how I was thrown into a totally different realm. I was present, I was here, there was the pleasure in my body, but more important was that I was here. I was into something real. I was not into a mental construct, but I was really in presence. Let's look at more
when you say being here. So you just said it wasn't a mental construct.
Yeah.
So being here felt like what at the time?
It was so full. It was so real. It was so real. It was so alive. I was delighted that I was actually more than my mind. It was just wonderful.
So your body was included in the picture of who you were, and what you're saying is beforehand you really viewed things and felt things from your head.
Yeah, my body was included and also my consciousness was working different. I felt, I couldn't have named it then, but I could really feel that my consciousness was not the constructing mind, but like an open, present, empty mind, being there purely. It felt so pure.
Okay.
So the pleasure actually, I think, was really nice, but not the main thing. The main thing that I was really here and I was really clear. Yeah, okay. That's wonderful.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how long did that new experience last? I'm not talking about details of the kiss, but I mean, how long did you manage to keep that new awareness of your body?
First I wanted to say 5 minutes, then
yes.
I think,
yeah.
No, more, maybe 30, maybe 45. It was very short. It was very short. Afterwards, I mean, my parents, this boy, I had very intellectual parents. And this was a very lower class boy, and my parents did not feel good about me relating to him. So I stopped it immediately.
Yes.
But I had this experience.
And the one thing you left out of it was he looked like Elvis Presley.
Yeah, he did look like Elvis
wonderful.
Presley. Yeah.
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 Because, again, in the notes you sent me, you
that shocked my parents.
It looked like Elvis Presley. Yeah. Yeah. So, in the notes you sent me, it seemed that what had happened was when you were born, you were fairly open, and then when your younger sister was born a few years later, 3 years later,
yeah.
You started to go more back into like a shell because you feel you weren't getting the attention that you were previously.
Yeah, I was very jealous. I was so jealous. And it was actually very difficult to be so jealous, to feel so full of hate, actually, towards her. And there was no support for understanding these feelings at all. So I felt so bad. And I think it's, looking back, I think it's my main trauma. That I felt these very strong feelings of hatred and abandonment and loneliness and having no support at all for it. So I withdrew. Yeah. I tried not to show it. I tried to be good.
Yeah, you tried to function, but somehow you weren't happy, were you?
No, I wasn't happy at all, no. I'm actually surprised that now talking about it, I talked many times about it, it still touches me. This sense of, as if my innocence was lost. As if the beauty of what I was became so dark. So dark. Yeah.
Yes, interesting, the word you use, you became so dark.
Yeah.
Yeah, darkness without life.
Yeah.
And it was the kiss that brought the life back, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. Yeah.
Yeah.
I felt beautiful again.
Yes. Yeah. And I know also from what you were telling me before, you kind of were very radical when you were young, and you organised a protest against the priests in your school, and you even had a school strike. So very much you knew you weren't happy, you knew things weren't right, but it was, and your focus was on changing the outside to try and make yourself feel better on the inside.
Yeah, I did. I looked outside of myself to change things and make things better, and I became very radical and tough, yeah.
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 And that, unfortunately, is what we do so much, isn't it? We try and change things on the outside because we believe through doing that, that's going to make us feel better on the inside.
We hope things have to change over there.
Yeah. It isn't as simple as that often.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that is one of the main things about spiritual growth, to actually really feel that everything is happening here in the first place.
Yes.
It's also happening there, but it's the thing where we can grow is here. Yeah.
So anyway, through this wonderful first kiss with that boy who looked like Elvis Presley, it opened something, and then there was a whole adventure in sex for you, and that your sexuality came alive.
Yeah.
And in your notes again, you said that there's nearly always amazing adventures and a great force.
Yeah.
Just talk about how you felt that great force.
In the beginning, I mean, I think it was in sex that I could feel presence, I could feel my beauty, I could slow down, I could feel my body. So in the beginning I needed a lot of sex because it was my way out. It was my way out of the prison of my mind, actually. So I was really looking for it, and I had quite a lot of, how you call this, adventures?
Yes, yes.
Adventures is a good word.
Yeah.
And it was always beautiful. I was blessed in a way to have had no bad experiences with sex.
Yes.
I always met nice people and nice men. And I mean, sometimes it was clumsy and sometimes it was, it didn't really work. But it was always good. The adventure was always good.
Yes.
And I very much appreciated to be so close to somebody and to just see what happens. I felt a certain trust. In that particular context, I felt a trust to relax. And of course, I became dependent on sex then, because it was for me, it was the way to myself. And that, of course, had to change. So I needed great frustrations too around men and lovers. I had to go through a lot of pain in relationships where men were not going to give me what I wanted to have. And that was a very important opening because that brought me back to the source, to myself, and not to think that the fulfillment is in sex or outside of myself.
Yes. There was also one story I thought was interesting because, again, we went through a period of being quite mental, and you were involved with political protests, anti-Vietnam War and things. And during that time, you got, again, a lot in your head, and you went through periods of intense fear.
Yeah. That was very important, yeah. I think looking back, it was a very powerful time for me to be in the student movement and to be in the demonstrations and to be in the women's movement, because I experienced I would say my power. I experienced a lot of power there, that I was actually able to stand up in front of many people and talk, which was new for me.
Mm.
But the whole atmosphere in the political movement was so mental and angry also. I think the most heavy struggles were between leftist people themselves, you know. We were so angry about somebody thinking a little bit different than somebody else. It was so dogmatic. Mm. And I became very unhappy there.
And you gave me...
I got into a period of intense anxiety, yeah. Mm. I was really, really scared for a long time, months. I was really, at some point I thought I'm going crazy. I was sitting on my bed and I really had to stay sitting there because I was afraid I would walk up, throw my clothes off, run naked to the streets, screaming. I didn't do it, happily enough. Yeah. I was so scared and I couldn't talk about it. I didn't know what was happening. I also didn't actually know how to deal with it, but to somehow suppress it. And then I went to a bioenergetics class because people around me had doing body work and doing therapy, but I thought that was stupid. That was very hippie and very not political, actually. But I did it. I went there. I don't know why I went there. Suddenly I found myself on my bicycle going there. I went there. We had to run around the room, and I thought, this is really crazy. And then we had to beat pillows. And I also thought it was really crazy. You had to scream at your father or something. And I did it, and then suddenly something happened. I felt this whole surge of feelings and emotions and pain and tears and anger like exploding in me. And it was so liberating. Mm. It was so liberating. I was again thrown back into the moment and I was seeing all this moving through me. It felt so good. It was so true. And at the same time I felt I'm much more than this. But this is so needed.
It seems you were also thrown back into your body.
Yeah, I was.
A moment took you back in your body and feeling again what was happening here. Yeah. Because an example you used when you were talking earlier, you were saying that when you had this intense anxiety, the only place, or one of the only places where you didn't feel it was when you were in the dentist chair. Yeah. And the pain and the fear of the dentist somehow was more than the intense fear for no reason.
It was the only place where I could relax, like in the chair. I felt, And the pain was good because it helped me to stay.
Took you away from...
focus.
Yeah. I think that's true. The worst kind of fears are the ones where you don't really know what the fears are about.
Yeah, and I
had
no
know what they're
clue.
about. You can somehow focus and you can use that. But
Yeah, I think the fear was about being disconnected from myself and my depth. And still, sometimes when I have fears, it's nearly always moments that I'm disconnected. And, I'm too busy. I'm not paying attention enough.
So after the bioenergetic session, I know you tried other kinds of therapy. Yeah. And you had a big adventure there, didn't you? Trying these different things. Just talk us through about some of the things you tried and how effective they were.
Well, actually, I started then with co-counseling, which is a self-help therapy. It's a very simple thing, actually, but it was tremendous help for me. I started to understand how feelings work, how they can move through your body, how they open up into something deeper, into something else. I experienced being unburdened from the from the anger and the hatred and the, I would say what's a good English word for that? That things are so dull, the dullness of suppression. And I started to understand how my feelings were, intelligence in my feelings. It's so good to see intelligence in it. It's not some sort of stupidity, but it is very intelligent and very, like the whole ego structure, it is such a beautiful, refined, intelligent construction if you understand it from the perspective of how it had to protect us. It's so well attuned. It's so, yeah. Actually, it's on some level it's a wonderful thing, and that it helped us, and it makes sense. That I think that's the thing. It makes sense.
So, can you give an example of how being in touch with your feelings made you understand things better? Just how did that work for you practically at the time?
I think that actually feeling the anger, I mean, I could actually feel the anger towards my father.
So it was like an energy that you felt. It was a mental idea, but also an energy that you felt.
No, it was not a mental idea at all. It was totally a feeling experience.
Yes.
And the heat of it, and the fullness of it, and the direction in it, and the reason why I was angry, and sort of hearing myself expressing while I was angry. I didn't know I was angry. I heard myself talking, and I heard why I was angry, and I thought this makes sense. I thought I really made sense. Oh, sorry.
So there's like another part of you. There was the part being angry and the part with the energy, and there's another part who's able to watch that, observe that.
Yeah, observe that and see see the intelligence in it.
Yeah.
And also noticing then that when these things are allowed, anger is not going to stay. Something else is happening. And how we move from one thing into the other thing, and actually I think we always move back to stillness, to love, to simplicity, to spaciousness. I didn't got that so clear then yet. I mean, it has been a long way of understanding how. I think in the beginning I was most focused on feelings.
Yes.
Because feelings is very clear, and it's what most people know. You can experience feelings like sadness, anger, jealousy, happiness. But to sort of discriminate more subtle states, that took much longer. To actually to bring my attention there. That was only in the spiritual work that I. Also, Ridhwan work was very important because they make so much discrimination between different states.
Yeah, we'll come on to that a little bit later. But I'm interested at that time. It was the feelings that was somehow a doorway.
Yeah.
And with those feelings, you started to understand yourself better.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was the clues that you had. And I know you also did work with rebirthing.
Rebirthing I did, breath work. It's so important also.
Yes.
Because it taught me that it's possible to keep breathing in everything. The breath is just sort of carrying you through everything, through heaven and through hell. And it's just this possibility to always breathe and be taken by the flow of life through everything was such a support.
Yeah, and we all breathe, but most of us, a lot of the time, are not aware of how we're breathing. And actually, breathing's a great tool, isn't it, to help us moderate our feelings, and also it's a clue to how we're doing inside. Because I know that for myself, that if I watch my breathing, it tells me a lot about my state, both my physical and my mental state.
It does it, and it helps also very much to intensify presence and experience. So when we sort of try to suppress things a little and we breathe a little bit more, things we try to suppress actually come into consciousness.
So for people who are watching that don't really know the word presence, they know the word, but they don't know what you mean by that. What briefly do you mean by presence?
I think I would say presence is a sort of a very full sense of beingness. So I would say it's the ground, the depth, which is always there and which is sort of penetrating everything. It's here while I'm talking.
So how do you feel it now?
I feel it as a fullness, a calmness, something which is very, I don't know words. It's there totally out of itself. I'm not constructing it. I can rest in it. It's still, it's simple. It's very good to feel. And it's like all the other things. For instance, we're doing this interview and I'm a little bit nervous about it. So I can feel this little nervousness. And the fact that this little nervousness is happening in the presence I feel, and the presence you feel, because I think you experience presence too.
Sure, I feel it now.
So,
yeah.
Yeah, so, and that's also so lovely, I think, of meeting another person, that when two presences come together, there is more presence to support the things which are happening in presence.
Yeah, it's a support that's always there somehow, isn't it? And,
yeah, it's always there.
I know for myself, I can forget, I can move away from it, but it's always there. And one of the ways of refinding it, as we were discussing, is breathing, being again in touch with the body, and it slows the mind down, and you come back to something. It's like an old friend somehow.
Yeah, it's a very.
Yeah. So just moving on with your story a little bit, you started to study Tantra after reading a book by Osho. That's Bhagwan
Yeah.
Rajneesh. He's now called Osho. And you went to the Humanitarian University in Holland with the famous Viresh. What was that like?
It was a mind blow. I mean, this place was outrageous. They did the most crazy things there. Mm. So far away from anything I could even have imagined. And they would be so extreme. I would be screaming like 24 hours. And I think it was too much. Looking back, I wasn't able to really embody that. Mm. I mean, it was actually interesting experience that I had, that you can sort of scream and scream and scream, but be totally disconnected while you scream. Mm. You don't have to be in it, you can... So it was an incredible adventure, I would say. It was all this, of course, also all these dynamics, but the dynamics were the most safe things, I would say, because we were put also in very scary situations with other people and encounter and all these things. And I don't regret it at all, but I saw people going a bit crazy from it. It was too much.
Yeah, I did a weekend with him once in London. He came to London and I spent this whole weekend, 48 hours, and it was probably the wildest experience of my life. And as you say, it was crazy. I won't go into all the details.
No, you better don't talk about the details.
But it's the way I saw it was at the time, and I see it now, is it was like completely throwing me out of my structures, the way I saw reality. It was confronting me on who I felt I was on so many sides. Yeah. And it was on the verge of overload at times, because there was very little sleep in this 48 hours.
Yeah, no sleep. No,
we were doing these crazy things. And it's not the kind of thing I want to do again, definitely, but looking back on it at the time in my life, it had a value.
Me too.
Because it showed me that who I thought I was wasn't exactly who I thought I was, and that in itself was valuable. It made me realise certain things afterwards.
Yeah, and all these things you think you need to be able to exist, or there is so many assumptions we have about what we need to stay intact as a person, that there is... Well, it was a very important experience. I stayed there 3 months. It was important 3 months.
And then you're also telling me...
But it made me very tough also, because I had also to, in a way, to protect myself. So I was blown through many things, but also I didn't felt safe enough to really open. So I became tough. I became quite hard, actually. Also, all the sex we did, and I mean, in a way, it was nice because you just go with it, you know, no thinking, but also I became tough, and that was why I left at some point. My friends told me, you are becoming really tough.
So, okay, so even though there was a lot of relationship with other bodies and your own body, what you're saying is, I think, that you lost a refinement or a depth in your feelings.
Yeah. I lost vulnerability because it was actually too scary.
Okay.
It was actually too scary. I did it, but something on a very deep level tightened up.
Okay.
So I could do it all. I can do it all, but the depth of my heart was not coming with it, I would say.
So what does vulnerability mean to you?
Beautiful question. Yeah, I think it's a sort of nakedness. I think it's about being here now and acknowledging the incredible sensitivity we have, and the incredible sensitivity of our hearts and our whole being, actually. And to acknowledge that, and to be actually in a space that can be touched also. So not to protect myself, you know, to make myself tough or hard or disappear. It's also something of being on the edge, I would say, being really in the middle of vulnerability, openness. Vulnerability is a little bit difficult word maybe because it's so connected to pain, the association with pain, vulnerability. And yes, it is the place where I can feel intense pain, but it's also the place where you can feel intense contact and sweetness and a meeting of two souls. And
it's not always so easy in day-to-day life, is it?
no, it's not. That's what I like actually about the tantric meditations, because you sit together and you consciously bring in this vulnerability.
Yes.
And it's just beautiful to hang out in the vulnerability, even if not something particularly happens.
Yes.
Like now. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very touching. Yeah.
So the next thing that happened in your life was a big event, and it's using the vulnerability angle is a great way to go into it, was that for the first time you fell madly in love with someone who was also a disciple of Osho, as you were at the time, a sannyasin. And that was hard for you, wasn't it?
Yeah, I feel... I had met many lovers, but I had never fallen so much in love. I felt totally in love. And this man, I think he embodied, for me, meditation and a deep contact with, I would say, his inner joy. But at the same time, he was, as a person, I mean, he was, I would say, all over the place. He would be I could not count on him at all. I mean, he would leave me, he was English also, actually.
Okay.
He would leave to England, he would leave to Pune, he would go to other women, he would be just in a sort of free flow, which in some way I admired. But it was so difficult for me. I felt abandoned, I felt not loved. He didn't know if he wanted to be with me. And I was sort of grasping after him, and I went through hell, actually, I think for 7 years. It's a long time looking back. It was in this period I started with the Ridhwan work. And in the Ridhwan work...
we should just explain what Ridhwan work is, I think.
Yeah.
So just talk very briefly about how you found the Ridhwan work and what it was for you at that time.
Okay. I found the Ridhwan work, it was recommended to be from many different sites, actually. Yeah, maybe that's a bit much to talk about. I heard about it both in Pune and from my own supervisor and from friends. So from many sites, suddenly people were recommending this work. It's the work of Alma's. I think you talk a lot about it in these interviews.
And he's coming to this very studio this afternoon.
Yeah, I know, he is.
A.H. Alma's, Hamid Ali, that's right, yes.
But what was, for now, it was the important thing, what was taught me there was this possibility to actually stay with my feelings and stay curious. So to really stay curious what happens when you stay with your feelings. So not to have a feeling and discharge it and then we are back to normal again, but to stay with a feeling, maybe discharge it if it discharges, but then to stay really curious what happens next. Because then something opens, and to have a curiosity to what opens. And I use this in this moment because that night, this lover of mine, he was again disappeared, and I felt again the agony and the grasping and the feeling abandoned and feeling helpless, actually. I felt so incredibly helpless. I tried everything on him, all my therapeutic knowledge to make him into a stable husband. It didn't work. I tried to do everything with myself to become a person who didn't mind not to have a stable husband. But it also didn't work. So I felt utterly helpless, and I actually went into the helplessness. So it was really, I would say, a movement of surrender. I said, okay, take me. Let the helplessness take me, and the sadness and the pain and the not knowing what to do, and maybe there is no love for me on this world, and to have the whole total intensity of it. And I managed to do it. I stayed, it took hours, I stayed with it, I moved through everything. And then at some point I felt so abandoned, and then moving through it, I felt so held. I felt completely held by existence. And it was an incredible opening. It was like my heart, the whole perception of my heart changed. My heart was not more like a heart which is loving someone or wants to be loved or needs to be loved, but it became like a complete open window, total open window. And so pure and so open, so free actually, and so delicate and sensitive. And it was just there.
So the key, in a way, was very simple, or it wasn't easy to do at that time, but was to be with and completely allow the feelings, and then understand and see what else is there, and something else gets revealed.
Yeah, stay curious.
Stay curious and available, and you used the word surrender too.
Yeah, surrender. Yeah. And I fell out of it was such a deep experience of that I don't need something outside of myself. It's really possible, because I knew that already. I mean, the teaching is obvious, but to actually have the experience to really surrender, and actually that every experience can be a door to go inside. And pain is actually a very good entrance, I would say.
Yeah.
It's like sex, it's very powerful, it's a great force.
And in society, generally, we try and avoid pain, whether it's physical or emotional or mental.
Yeah, and we try to avoid sex, yeah. I mean real sex.
Okay, yeah. Well, we'll come on to that later, what real sex is. But I'm interested in this, how generally in society, pain doesn't have very good PR these days. It's kind
not
of
at all.
ignored, something to move away from.
Yeah, you can experience it as a failure. I think success in our culture is seen as happiness, and pain is seen as some... I mean, I saw it for a long time as a sort of failure.
Yes.
Yeah. I also felt that in the Rajneesh movement. I felt I couldn't really get the love, life and laughter the way I should get it.
Yes, that's right. I should have picked up on that. You mentioned that somehow you felt you did it, but there was something you felt you missed and you didn't quite fit in the end.
Yeah. Yeah. I always felt there was something wrong with my pain. Mm. And maybe it was a misinterpretation. I don't think that was meant as a teaching there, but I experienced it that way. I didn't feel real refined support for how to deal with the pain. Mm. Except maybe for drop it, but it's very difficult. Suggestion. Yeah.
So tell us how your work started, your Tantra work started. What was happening in your life when you decided to really explore this more in terms of a profession, if you like, and in doing your workshops and your sessions?
Yeah, I started becoming a co-counseling teacher, which is a very easy thing to do. And then my groups filled up very easily. So I would say it went by itself. I was very lucky. People seemed to be happy with me as a teacher. And it went very smooth. It went almost by itself, I would say.
So when you started, what was like your intention? Because we hear the word, in spiritual circles, we hear the word Tantra, and most people think of sex. And obviously it includes sex, but it isn't really totally about sex at all, is it?
No, sex is only part of it. But for me, sex was the reason why I got interested.
It was the catalyst for you.
Yeah, because sex for me was so interesting. It did so much for me, so I was curious. And I always felt more must be possible with this. This is such a strong thing. There must be great potential. So when I heard about Tantra, I was immediately very interested. So the sex part of Tantra was the first thing which took my interest. Now the sex part of Tantra is not so important anymore even, actually. It's more the whole thing. But then it was my way why I started to look there. Yeah.
Yeah, because you were, in the notes you gave me, you were saying that, if I can find it here, that in Dutch, the word Tantra, I think, means being free. Am I remember that right?
Yeah, making love. I mean, in English, the word is making love. You use making love, which has the idea that you have to make something. I mean, you could hear it like that. But in Dutch, we call making love vrije. Vrije, actually, when you would translate it into English, you would say being free. And that's a beautiful word, I think, because it's when you can make love from the perspective of being free, you see it as a possibility to be with another person and to be completely free. I think that's also what Tantra is trying to help us to get contact with, to this freedom of being in the moment and not having to construct anything, of not having to do anything, of just to be present and see what arises in the moment.
But how does this tie in with relationships, insofar as most people are in monogamous relationships and they want to be with a particular partner and they want to have a family and a life together? Mm-hmm. How does this tie in with just being free?
This is a different level of being free you talk about now. Yeah. Well, I'm not talking about being free that you cannot be in a committed relationship.
Okay.
No, it's not the type of free I was talking about now. No, I think you can be completely free in a committed relationship. It doesn't have to be a contradiction. I think the freeness is about the freedom to actually be where you are and to have the experience which you have. That's the freedom, I would say, not to have many lovers or only one. It's not the level I was talking about. No.
Okay.
And Tantra is not particularly that you have to have many lovers or something, no. Yeah. You can, but you also can as well have not.
So
it's a superficial thing, I would say.
Yeah, so it's about using the body as a key, as a catalyst to be in touch with your feelings.
Yeah, and to be in touch with presence and all the different states of presence.
Yes.
And also as a doorway to a consciousness itself, I would say. Because when you're really in your body and you're really aware of that, noticing that, it's also, it helps you to contact consciousness itself too.
And what do you mean by consciousness itself?
Well, the part in us which notices, which sees, which is there, which is completely open.
Yes.
And which in its purity is incredibly beautiful to experience. Mm. I mean, it's very beautiful to experience the content of life, but it's also very beautiful to experience that which notices the content of life. Mm. And you can limit your attention to the content, but to have it together with the consciousness itself is the beautiful state. Yeah.
No, this is very interesting because I think I understand what you're saying, that basically the Tantra to start with is very much being in touch with the sensations in your body and all the pleasure and the extremes of pleasure. And on the other hand, there's something else going on which is taking you into the sensitivity, as we talked earlier, the vulnerability that we all feel at some level. And through that, we then become more aware of what you're calling consciousness. I would probably call the ground of being, presence, where there's something there that's always there, that isn't primarily us, but also is not completely not us either.
Yeah.
It's like you're falling back. So through the Tantra, tell me if I'm explaining this incorrectly from your but through the Tantra, again, it's like you were talking earlier about the emotions, going through the levels till you come to consciousness, presence, the ground of being, whatever we call it, which is ultimately who we really are and who our personality comes out of.
Yeah, it's ultimately who we really are. And also, I mean, touching my hand, I mean, I can move through all these layers and also I'm my hand. I mean, it's one of the beautiful things manifesting in this moment, my hand, and it's so precious. And I think that's for me the beautiful thing of Tantra, that it's so much embracing the fullness also. It's not only about emptiness, it's about emptiness, but it's so much embracing the fullness of being, like my hand arising, my voice speaking, us manifesting here. The stillness of the studio. that it's so rich. Life is so incredibly rich. And it's also sometimes so incredibly painful. So it's not only nice, but...
Yes, somehow the pain is there where there's a block. Is that how you would see it? And there's
not
blocks are
only,
at
I would
different
say,
levels.
I think there's also real pain. I mean, physical pain, for instance. Before the interview, we're talking a bit about aging and bodies, and there is physical pain. People we love die. Things we really longed for don't happen in our lives. I think pain is part of life. There's also a lot of pain, of course, because of blockages. But I think pain is part of it. And when we become more sensitive, we also feel pain more. But I think when we are more freed, pain is more something which moves through us. It moves through us, it touches us deeply. Sometimes it opens a deeper layer. But I think it's simply part of life, like the beauty of life is part of life.
The human life is an adventure, isn't it? And it's...
Yes, it is.
We see where it goes, and it's unique for all of us. Yeah. So if someone comes to one of your workshops, what would they expect?
What they expect, I don't know.
Well, I mean, when they say they expect,
reasons,
I should have been more specific. What would they? What would be happen for them?
Yeah. What could happen for them? I actually think that the most important thing people get out of it, also what they tell in the end, is that they actually learn something about embracing all experience. So acceptance of all inner experience. I think that's the most important. And then they get also a taste of what body work can do for you, and breath work. And they get a taste of hanging out with another person and be honest. And to be honest about everything what happens in the field between two people. The difficult things, the beautiful things. To get trust in that when we acknowledge these things, that nothing terrible is happening, but that actually contact is deepening. And they get a taste of that. And they love that, because it's beautiful to experience.
Yes, but it takes courage to do it, doesn't it?
It takes a lot of courage, and we give a lot of support. I think that's what we are good in, to give a lot of support to do this thing which is so scary to do.
Yeah, because I think so many people are drawn towards the inner journey, but it just seems not only frightening for them, but it just seems impossible to combine that with a life, how they would see a life in the world. They think, if I really go into my vulnerability and I feel my feelings, how can I function in my office or travelling around Amsterdam or just the normal things of life?
Good question. It's a big thing. Yeah.
It is a big thing for many people,
But it is possible to move with vulnerability. Yeah, and it's actually miraculous that I think at the moment that I can do this, it feels like moving to the city is like a miracle happening almost. When I try to move to the city and I'm uptight and I think, will I get the tram in time? Will I get the taxi in time? Will I? But when I'm relaxed more, then suddenly a taxi appears, or a tram appears. There's so much support also in ordinary life. I mean, it's amazing, all these trams and taxis driving around Amsterdam to bring us from here to there.
Yeah.
And they just appear.
When I kind of think about your life, I kind of see it very much perhaps in simplistic terms as a journey from your head
it is.
Through to your body, and you really, especially when you're
presence, I would say.
Student movement, you're really trying so hard to make things work and focus on the outside, and if I change the outside, somehow I'm going to be happier and the world will be better. And it mirrors something for me as well, because I was very involved with in the student movement, anti-Vietnam War in England, very, very big protests and organising. And I really felt that changing the world was so important for everybody.
Yeah, me too.
And then there came this time that I realised that actually the whole thing was futile unless I started to recognise that change needed to happen here. And not so much, not a change in me, a change of how I was with myself. Because in a way, if I could allow the change in myself to just happen automatically, then something then new would appear. And I've always found that something new has appeared. And I think it's the same in your life, isn't it?
Yeah.
The more you've come back and focused on the body, the more something else has appeared.
Yeah, yeah. Though I don't know, when you say the body, I think, the body is an important dimension, but it's not only the body. I think the body is appearing in space, is appearing in presence. It's very important, but it's not like the ultimate thing.
No, it's a doorway.
It's a doorway,
Yes.
It's a very important doorway, Yeah, it's a very important doorway, and it's very rich. And it's a wonderful place to hang out in. But I don't know how it's after death. Maybe that's a wonderful place to hang out too. I don't know.
So I'm looking at the clock. We have a couple of minutes left.
Okay.
Anything further you'd like to say about your work? The last couple of minutes we have left. About the work and also the work with sex, I think I feel a great dedication to help people to relax in sex. Because there are so many judgments and ideas we have about how sex should look, what it is to have good sex and what it is to be a good lover. And I think it's so painful because so many people feel like they cannot live up to these expectations. And they start to... there is so much pain, I would say, around sex. And I think my dedication is very much to help people to relax and to be... before I said what is real sex, I think real sex is a place where we can relax and be attentive to what moves through us and see what the contact with another person brings up in us, and to be immersed in the body. And I love to teach that. I think it's a very powerful way of teaching the non-duality of being. The non-duality of being through sex.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, the appointed second of finishing is rapidly approaching.
Yeah, I think it's a good place.
Thank you, Carla, for coming along to talk to us here on Conscious TV. And thank you, everyone, for watching Conscious TV. And I hope we see you again soon. Goodbye.